Welcome to Tech Talks. I'm joined today by Piercy from Cinch. Hi, Chris. Thanks for coming.
Thanks for having me, Jack. How are you doing?
Yeah, not bad. Not bad at all. Thank you. Not bad at all. So look, I always like to kick these things off just to make sure everyone knows who you are. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Cool. So yeah, I'm Piercy. I'm the talent acquisition manager at Cinch. I've been in talent acquisition or recruitment, let's say, for 11 years now. So I started my journey on the agency side. Joined quite a large business, focusing on infrastructure and networks originally for that kind of first year or so. And then I spent a bit of time at another recruitment agency as well, but always stayed within that IT side. And then made my way through kind of via an IPO into then internal. Spent a big part of my time at AO.com for 5 years before joining Cinch in August. And what a ride that's been so far.
Yeah, so I didn't realise that you came through an RPO to then internal.
Yeah, so I did a stint at Deutsche Bank via Resource Solutions, and that was like real high volume, heavy hitting contracts, Java developer recruitment for Deutsche Bank. Yeah, so that was like filling 20, 25 Java devs a month, just pure CV service, and that's what really wanted that appetite to get fully internal, to start considering the real value that you can add from a wider talent and attraction perspective, because that was almost just a service. You're just delivering, but there's no added value, there's no partnering, there's no bigger picture. It was great and it was perfect for what I needed at the time, and it was that step in the right direction that I wanted to get to. But yeah, that was my bridge between agency and internal.
And you never looked back since?
No, only forward.
Amazing. Yeah, because people always say that about, it surely must be easy going internal. I'm like, are you mental? You have to do all the EVP, the forecasting, and also if you can't fill a role, you can't just not answer emails. You
Can't just hide. No. It takes a lot of the same skills, but it's a complete different job. Right. For me, I wasn't your typical I wasn't very salesy. I think my winning new business was a challenge for me, and actually not a piece of work that I enjoyed. And but if I was working well, if I was recruiting, I loved that part of it. I was really good at it, so I wanted to do that more. And that was kind of my journey into trying to think about actually what else happens internally, and I started to explore that. And it was, at the time, it was really hard to get into internal recruitment from agency, because I think talent acquisition has grown massively over the last maybe 10 years, but it wasn't a department for a lot of companies. It was more of a side job of someone in HR. So it's good to see how that's, and probably beyond 10 years, but this is my experience from joining, from going internal talent acquisition.
Sure.
But now that talent acquisition has become a piece on its own as a wider people function, it started to turn into quite a sexy role now.
Yeah, well, yeah. So why has that happened? Because that's a really interesting point. I never thought about it like that. Because yeah, you are right. It never was a particular department or anything like that. And yeah, is that because it's harder to find people?
I think it's a mix of things, really. I think it's become a real art to find people. I think companies are so focused on how they grow and how they recruit the right talent as well. And even the way that we review and assess people has completely changed. Yeah, so it's not so much just about a candidate's CV anymore. Like, it's completely changed, and it's not just about what a company wants. It has to be a two-way piece. So it's all about being the right career choice for a candidate or someone that might be of interest in joining your company. And the competition is just growing and growing and growing. As we come into a world now, especially life after or during COVID, people have started to understand that working remotely or working flexibly in hybrid isn't as much of an issue that they thought it would be, and actually it works in a lot of businesses. So now that widens the talent pool of not only where companies can attract candidates, but actually where candidates will start to look for opportunity. Yeah. So we don't just look at CVs. Education isn't always the most important thing. and finding good people. Well, a lot of them good people aren't naturally looking, so we need people that have got that ability to immersify themselves in a market or a sector or a pool of talent. So let's talk about tech, and a job advert isn't going to attract the right people anymore. And now that that's become what it is, we need specialists that can understand that market, that can relate to that market as to why you might want to join this company, where are we going, what are the great things, that employer brand piece that we talk about. And that's where it's kind of pulled away from HR now. And HR itself has evolved more from just your typical generalist, and that's grown arms length. So you're getting a department of a people department that specialises in learning and development, in employer relations, in talent acquisition, in reward and benefits. All this that's growing is now become taken seriously as businesses need to attract the right talent, and to attract the right talent, we have to have the right kind of setup and the right infrastructure in place.
A few things you said there I'd never even thought about in terms of what's part of especially an internal talent acquisition manager's role. Like you said, employee rewards and benefits. L&D usually falls into it as well, right? A lot of the time. How could anyone add that on the back of a HR job, ever? But
exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, you look now in some of the really advanced talent acquisition teams, and you've got like data analysts in there, you've got sourcers, talent acquisition partners, so you've got people that are more focused on working the market, your employer brand, so that's no longer part of your consumer brand. It's a separate piece that's more aligned to that people department that works really closely with the brand. So, but it's about attracting people to work there. I've seen companies that have project managers, business analysts, all based within a talent acquisition function, which is awesome. And it just shows how big it's becoming and how important attracting the right people is to businesses' growth and success.
Which, especially nowadays after COVID, like you said, so much more important, because you're not just only competing with the people that are in a 25-mile radius around you. You're actually now competing with, I know it sounds dramatic, the world.
Well, in some cases, yeah.
Yeah. So now that you've got that kind of competition, you really need to up your game when it comes to like your EVP and that sort of thing. Is that a big part of your job now at Cinch?
So my job at Cinch, so I've come in as their talent acquisition manager, and we've Cinch moving from that almost startup to scale up piece now. This is where we really need to get the right processes in place, the right structure. We've got really ambitious plans to grow as a business, and Cinch is really well known. It's grown massively from a consumer perspective. People see the adverts with Rylan on, they see all the sponsorship and that them really obvious brand colours, the purples and the blues, that people recognise that company now. But what we need to go on a journey of is getting people to recognise that company from an employer branding perspective. So what we like to work for, who are the great people that work in our company, what are our values, what's the culture like here, and why would you want to come and work there? Yeah. So that's a piece of what I'll be working on, but also how do we attract the right people? How do we get in front of the right people? What's the structure internally to be able to provide that support and that real partnership with our stakeholders being the hiring managers, people that need to recruit into Cinch. So that's a big part of what I'm doing, is looking at the bigger piece around attraction, how we assess, ultimately how we hire, how do we get in front of the right people to eventually attract them to either apply or to have a chat and to explore a career with us.
Yeah, and that's the whole thing, isn't it? Again, like I said before, is that very rarely are people actually actively looking for a job, and if they are, everyone's talking to them. You're up against loads and loads of people. How do you get those candidates that aren't necessarily looking, that'll just be approaching your business because it is a good business to work for? It's a minefield.
The thing is as well, I mean, the market for trying to recruit and grow a business has never been any more competitive than I've experienced in my years of recruitment. So it's so much more important now more than ever, and that's never going to go away. And now a lot of candidates, especially in the tech market, they have the they have the choice. It's down to them. The ball's in their court. They have 3, 4, 5 companies. I mean, most people that you and I speak to, they've got 5, 6, 7, 8 people knocking on my door every day in their inboxes, on their phones, on LinkedIn. So how are we standing out? How are we there subtly in the background so that when that message does drop in, or when they see us at an event, they think, oh, actually, I remember Cinch from that great talk they did at that event or that conference or whatever it was. It really feels like a place I'd like to work.
Yeah, definitely. And obviously, speaking with engineers day in, day out, or technical people anyway, day in, day out, what are you finding is the trends about what's most important to them? What are you seeing come up over and over again?
There's a lot around flexibility, and flexibility in how they work, where they work. But there's still, and this is something that I've always noticed, is there's still a big piece around who they work with. So are they going to be working with like-minded people that have the same drive, that have the same passion as them, that really, really care about what they're doing? And I think that's a big piece in the recruitment and assessment piece that I've always seen from Cinch, from AO, and through my networks, is that's something. If you're a techie, a software engineer, or whatever it is in the market, or just interviewing, they want to see that why you care about what you're doing, what you want to do, just as much as they want to see why the business cares about their own software developers, their own engineers, anyone within that tech department.
Yeah, and like you said, usually it was historically, it was always a case of people coming in. You were not testing them, but you were evaluating them on their competencies and their drivers and all this sort of stuff. But yeah, it is the other way around now, isn't it? And it's how do you get that across to people? I mean, how do you get that across to people in an interview?
We work with our hiring managers around for them to really understand their own departments, their own vision, their own goals, but not just their own teams, their own departments and the businesses, but also to really just take into account what are the challenges that you find in your role, in your department, in your company, and how can that create opportunity? Because the other thing as well is when we're interviewing and when we're assessing candidates, and we know that we've got to portray a really clear light of what life's like at Cinch, both the positives, but also some of the challenges. Because from an employment perspective, we want to know that are they up for some of the challenges that we face? Do they understand what could be difficult for them when they join this business? While also saying, but we're doing so much cool stuff, and when we solve these problems, this is where we're going to get to. This is how we're disrupting the market, or this is the innovation that we're bringing to the table. You can't mismanage people's expectations. You can't sell them the dream and then expect them not to worry about the challenges when they join. And you don't want to set them up to fail, because it's as much about them succeeding in their careers as yourself succeeding in getting the right person in. And I think that if we really focus on a give and take, and the we as in any hiring manager, any talent acquisition professional, any recruiter needs to focus both on, all right, these are going to be some of the challenges, and hopefully the right people will be attracted to them challenges and think, well, actually, you know what, I can make a difference there. I know how to fix that, or I want to be able to try and fix that. That will look great on my CV and my experience. And I think that's the way that it needs to be approached now, not just slapping a technical test in front. Can you do that? Because if you can't, you're not working with us. There's a lot of, actually, you might not be able to fix it, but how do you go about it? What's that way of thinking?
Yeah.
I think that from my experience, that's worked well as part of that assessment process. Something that's a little bit more collaborative, a real life scenario.
I love that. So obviously when we had Jonty on last, he was talking about the interview process and how much you've scaled and that sort of thing. I guess what is your approach to interviewing at the minute?
Yeah, so I think we're very much keen to get our people involved in the process. So it's a lot more collaborative. We don't rely on one person. I think that helps a lot with unconscious bias as well, or really kind of minimizing biases in general. So if we've got a few people from our, not just that team, but people that will be working and interacting, whether that be in the squad or the tribe or across other areas, we try and involve a number of people within a couple of stages. And that's talking about what working at Cinch is like, some of the challenges we have, what the direction we're going in, and what this role is really about, while also trying to understand a bit more about their experience. We might do some collaborative whiteboard sessions to understand what their thought processes and their approach to things are, which is never a right or wrong answer, because in the real world there isn't always a right or wrong answer, and you have to work collaboratively to figure that out. And that's why the thought process is really important for us. So we don't have typical technical tests, whether that changes in the future or not. But I think it all depends on, you need to be assessing. It goes right back to that job description, right at the start of the process. What do you need from this person? How are you going to assess that in them? And the majority of the time, people want someone that's got exposure and experience, that's still learning, that's still keen to learn, that's keen to collaborate and to find an answer and not be scared to fail.
Right. I love that. And that was going to lead me on to my next question, actually. What kind of people do you look for when hiring into Cinch? You said a few there. Always wanted to be learning, not scared of getting stuck in, problem solving, like to solve problems. Anything else that you would want people to know that if they're applying for a role at Cinch, they need to have in terms of attributes?
I mean, you touched on some of the key attributes there. Learning and development is a sign of someone that really cares and enjoys what they're doing. I think someone that enjoys what they're doing is super important, because that's when the real passions come out, and that's when you've got people that are passionate about what they do. That doesn't necessarily mean that they've got their hands in the air screaming like, I love this. It's like they care, they think about it, they want to understand it, they want to talk to other people about it, they want to learn together, to progress together, to fail together. So it's just people that aren't afraid to fail, that love to get involved, that can work well on their own, but they love working with other like-minded people, but also people that are quite modest in what they do, but are interested in what's the right way to do something, what's the right way to solve a problem, not always the fastest or the cheapest way. It's got to be doing something because it's the right thing to do.
Yeah, not just thinking about their ego and how it looks externally.
Yeah, right.
Even if it takes a little bit longer, getting solutions together. Okay. Now, one of the things that we've been talking to people about in the tech community a lot of the time recently is that obviously the digital skills gap, and that there isn't enough people in tech, the big war on talent, that sort of thing, and how they're trying to combat that through whether it be like hiring junior talent or investing in coding schools, that sort of stuff. Is there anything that Cinch you're doing at the minute to try and offset the skills gap?
So I think that's that next journey for us. So as we've grown quickly as a startup, we've got that kind of the bar set now for the level of seniority that we needed to get in order to be able to put a framework in place to bring in junior talent, but also to be able to support them and help them grow. So we've been working on recruiting engineering managers whose responsibility is people management, is to help facilitate and enable growth within not just our junior talent, within all talent within tech at Cinch. But that's something that we need to start focusing on now, is how do we start to invest in junior talent? Whether that's working with boot camps, partnering with colleges and universities, there's going to be a wider approach to this. And over these next few months, we'll start to really get the traction going with that.
That's fantastic. I mean, it's good that that's something that a bit, a business like Cinch, especially a business that's so well known, and is so focused on scaling up, but they're involving junior hires into that scaling that's very exciting.
There's some great businesses, I mean, in the Northwest alone, that are doing some great stuff to get people into tech, and get people into the sector. That's encouraging companies to hire more. It's encouraging a more diverse workforce. I mean, the amount of women in tech that there are now is fantastic, and we're seeing that grow more. And I know that it's a big agenda for a lot of companies now to invest in junior talent. And this junior talent as well, it's not necessarily, people associate junior talent with grads or people that are fresh out of education. This necessarily isn't. That this could be anyone that's gone through a career change, that's returning from an absence of work. And it's great to see so much investment into businesses like these boot camps and the way that the universities and the colleges are working closely with employers to represent the opportunities that are out there for careers, to educate people from a school and educational perspective all the way through to people that are considering complete career changes.
Yeah, you see that a lot with the boot camps now, right? With like North Coders, Code Nation, that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
A lot of people that were like tax consultants or like just completely different careers who have decided to go into. Why do you think that is? I mean, you've been recruiting tech for like 11 years, which my career is not a patch on that. Why do you think it's such an attractive proposition for people now going into technology?
It's the future, isn't it? I think that a lot of businesses rely heavily on their technology.
Yeah.
Whether that's from, I mean, my background over the last kind of 5-6 years is heavily reliant on e-commerce. So having a really effective website and actually how does that serve a customer, whether that's buying a car or buying a fridge. It's only going to continue. Like, companies will only become more online, more automated. There's going to be more, artificial intelligence. Everything is focused on tech. So I think that that's a really exciting opportunity that maybe wasn't as obvious back 10, 15 years ago when kind of we were going on that journey through education. But presuming it's similar age to me, maybe.
Roping me in there.
Fully, yeah.
No, I get you. Yeah, and again, the conversation we've been having is that in tech, when you be going into schools and trying to get people interested, tech was like in a dark room, headphones on, just crunching keys, whereas people didn't talk about. We had someone called Amelia Bampton on the podcast. She talked about it as well. She went to a school years ago and was talking about this BA, there's product owner roles, there's UX, all the way to the other side where it's more like data analytics, data science, obviously. But there's roles there that don't require you to even do any coding, and it's. And I think people need to be educated on that, absolutely, because
there's so many different types of roles involved in the wider tech landscape. And you reeled off a load there. When I left uni, I obviously didn't do a technical course, but I didn't have a clue. I joined a recruitment agency. They said, right, your market is network and infrastructure. What even is that? And then I remember like week one, one of our directors, as part of the training, talked us through kind of how tech is set up. And I think I remember that drawing in my head still now of like the infrastructure and networks being the hardware and how it's all connected. And it's so much different. How that diagram would look now compared to how it did in 10 years is amazing. And even then, at what was a basic design at the time, like I still struggle to get my head around it. So I think there is an element of, it's not nervousness around tech, but there's certainly that lack of understanding. I think it can be quite intimidating. Not having no experience in tech and considering a career in tech. And I think that's why, as employers, we need to be out there educating what that means. What does a software engineer do for Cinch? What does a product owner do for Cinch? What does a UX designer do for Cinch? Yeah. So all that is a big part of our longer term journey around working with local universities, local colleges, with the community, with the external wider community, to talk more about what we do, why we do it, and ultimately like what it means, what it means to our customers, what it means to the industry, because what Cinch are doing hadn't been done before. Yeah. So it's a really exciting journey to be on. We're disrupting the market, but we need to be able to tell that story. We need to be able to tell that story at all levels, not just for people that are outside of technology.
So Cinch's culture, Cinch obviously scaled very quickly during a pandemic. Everything was remote pretty much. First of all, how did they do it? But also, even like now with you in the business, how have you seen their culture stay so strong whilst growing so quickly? What do you reckon the secret is to it?
So it's all about hiring the right people and not rushing them hires. One thing I've noticed at Cinch is although there's always an urgency within any company that you speak to, hiring is priority and they need them yesterday. It's always going to be the case, no matter how good your forecasting is. There's always going to be recruits that you're trying to make that you needed yesterday. But one thing I've noticed at Cinch is that there is a pressure to get these people in, but it has to be the right people. So don't worry if they've got a longer notice period. It's about getting the right person in. Don't worry if you've interviewed 4 or 5 people. Don't feel like the next one has to be a hire. It's about finding someone, going back to what you really need, assessing them against what you really need, and not assessing them against stuff that's not. Don't worry about the presentation skills if they're not going to be presenting on something. Worry about, do they care? Do they share the same values? And ultimately, if we've got right our own assessment agenda at the start around what we absolutely need, and that's not a massive list, if that's just a few key features, and then we can look at who's going to be able to add to our culture, but really kind of absorb our values, then that's what we make the decision on at the end of the day. Can they do the job? Are they going to be an advocate of our values? And are they going to bring something to the table? And that seems to be the success that we've had so far in how Cinch have grown and how we'll continue to grow, is by hiring the right people.
Have you seen it, not necessarily at Cinch I'm talking about, but like in the past, or heard stories about where businesses have rushed hiring and haven't really focused on those things you just mentioned, and it's been...
I think there's been elements of hiring the wrong people in most places that I've worked, but it's ultimately about learning off the back of that. So why were they the wrong hire? Was that's not necessarily that candidate's fault. That could well just be the hiring manager who's made the wrong decision. Do we understand what we're recruiting for? Have we managed the candidate's expectations on the challenges that come into it? Have we set them up to succeed or fail? And it's about looking back and learning, all right, what was the real reason why that person wasn't the right hire? And how did we not identify it, or how did the candidate not identify it? Because it's not just on one person. It's a two-way process both ways. So we have to have some accountability and look back and say, right, what could we have done better? And I think you do see that a lot, and it does happen. And sometimes with the best of us, we might recruit someone that we, in hindsight, wasn't right, and that doesn't mean it's wrong, but we just need to look back and understand why that was the case.
Mate, it's great talking to someone who all my mates take the mick out of me, because I'm really passionate. I love recruitment. I love doing recruitment. I'm really passionate about it. I get a kick out of it. Even the guys I work with, like, Jesus Christ, chill out. But it's nice talking to you, because you are genuinely someone who sounds super passionate about recruitment and like growing teams out. And
I buzz off it. It's great to love the job you do, and that's why I preach so much about it. Because if you hire someone that really cares and really loves their job, then it's not just work for them. Them getting up on a Monday morning isn't as much of an effort. Learning about your craft isn't an effort, because you enjoy it, you absorb it. I love talent acquisition. I love the challenge of how on earth are we going to attract and assess and hire great people at pace, but over a longer term. How do we get ourselves in front of passive candidates? How do we get ourselves out there to the right audience that are right for our business and that our business is right for them? And there's so much in regards to technology that's coming along that's aiding that talent acquisition and how everything from recruitment systems, applicant tracking systems, right through to automated candidate-driven AI. There's so many tools out there that are just changing the game as TA advances, and it's great to hear about the way that some businesses are tackling these, whether that's tackling the volume of applicants that you get, and how do you deliver them a great candidate experience while also being able to focus some time on some of them roles that you've not quite got the luxury of applicants just dropping into your inbox. And the great thing about talent acquisition that I've not seen previously is there's a real community that's grown over recent years, where talent acquisition professionals are knowledge sharing. There's a really great scene now for webinars, for meetups, for events, where People are just sharing ideas, sharing experiences. So that's really great to see. And that again, like some of my friends outside talent acquisition don't get it. But yeah, I geek out about it a bit. I think it's great. I think if you want to be successful in talent acquisition, you've got to learn and you've got to speak to people in different businesses. Because the one thing I learned very quickly is that the challenges I have at Cinch or at AO or even previous to that, everyone else has got the same challenge. You're not the only one. And different people have challenged it differently, whether that's using technology or finding the right people or even recruiting a bit of a different skill set into their team. And that's where talent acquisition's evolving, because like I mentioned earlier on, it's not service. We're not delivering, or in my opinion, we're not delivering a service. We're partnering and adding a value. And it's not just to hire heads. It's the wider piece around how do we attract the right people and how do we do it efficiently, that we're delivering a great experience and that we can add intelligence into the process as well around how our competitors are doing and how they're doing it. And that all fascinates me.
Yeah, right. I love it. It's great. And you talked there about like tech in recruitment, and that was always I think years ago was software is going to replace recruiters. Like you're never going to need talent acquisition people because software can do it. And I 100% do not think that's the case. I think you'll use technology in your day to day to help you recruit the right people and make your decisions more intelligent. But I think how can a piece of software monitor someone's culture fit, or how can they meet them for a beer to ease them into a role, or I don't know.
It'll never replace. It'll only enable and enhance talent acquisition's capability, and you have to have a humanistic approach to talent acquisition, because ultimately people buy off people, and if you haven't got people expressing that journey, if someone can't see the passion of an individual, then they're not. How are they going to relate to that? Yeah. So some of the technology that's coming out now is incredible, and it's everything that you think of that never used to be a big part of the process. When we talk about the war on talent and finding different ways to attract talent, well, the referral piece is huge. And actually, how do we make our hiring managers? How do we make them kind of advocates for recruitment and talent acquisition? And this is a really big piece that I'm really interested in, is creating a hiring culture where the hiring managers and their teams feel as responsible for attracting and ultimately hiring people. So sounds like I'm trying to palm off talent acquisition, or no, actually you should do it. But what it really is actually these guys have got, if not better networks than ourselves. So how do we get them? I put them on a pedestal, get them shouting about all the great stuff. Like I want to join a company where I really respect who I'm lining into. I respect who I'm working with. So you have to be able to see that. And there's some great stuff that's coming out that helps enable that.
Anything you can tell us about in terms of like tech that you use day to day? Anything interesting?
So we've just gone live with our talent acquisition team, and part of why my role came in was we are super raw. So we're right from scratch. Yeah. So the two in my team have done a fantastic job so far with the hands tied behind the backs. So we've just gone live with an applicant tracking system now, which is going to help us be a lot more proactive. We can build talent pools, and then eventually, once we start building these talent pools, we can start creating them into more engaged kind of talent pipelines or engaged communities, in fact. We can be a lot more data driven. So we can look at how long it's taking us to recruit, how long people are in each stage of the process. We can automate some of that communication so that we're not taking away that humanistic approach. We're just adding a bit more communication to the candidates in order to give them a better journey. Right. So there's all this stuff, and ultimately we can manage our work a lot better with our stakeholders. So we've just landed that. We've got our careers site that's going live at the end of February. Wow. And then it's after that. It's like, right, what makes sense? We're building the structure and the foundations at the minute within our talent acquisition team to give the team better capability, enable them to be faster and more proactive, and try and cut out some of that reactivity that naturally comes from not having the right kind of systems in place.
Brilliant. Yeah, you hear that a lot with especially I think agency side a lot of the time. Agencies not having the right tools to deliver to roles and that sort of thing. But I never thought about it from an internal perspective. But I guess it could look quite expensive on the grand scheme of things if you're like, oh, LinkedIn recruiter account is this much, or an ATS is this much, whatever. But the amount of money it would save you is monumental.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the cost of a recruitment system is less than, depending on the system that you're getting, but it would cost more to hire another person in just to take off some of the workload of the team. So the way that we're approached, like this ATS is going to be the equivalent of another head in the team, because it's going to free up a lot more time for our team to. They don't have to post on every single job board anymore. They can just post one advert and it goes to them all. All the applicants come back into the same pot. Because if you think before that, we've got to go onto Indeed, post a job, check the ad response on there, go onto LinkedIn, post a job, check the ad response. That's 2 job boards and then already like an hour's worth of work.
Yeah.
So then if you want to get a bit more exposure in a specific tech market, you might look at Haystack or HackerJob, for instance. And then again, you've got that. So having that ATS, applicant tracking system in place, just adds so much to that firepower that a talent acquisition team can have.
Okay, cool. And look, whenever we get to the end of the podcast, I always like to ask one question, and it's always very enlightening. But again, recruited in tech for 11 years. For anybody looking to get into the tech sector, what would be your piece of advice that you would give them?
This probably won't come as a surprise following the conversation we've just had, but get involved. Like, there's so many the tech community is incredible for really supporting each other, for knowledge sharing, and for helping bring people along. My biggest piece of advice would be get yourself involved, get to some of the meetups, whether that's online or in person. Start speaking to people, understanding their journeys. Speak to companies about what their recruitment processes are like, what they look for in people, and just get involved.
Thank you for coming, Chris. Really appreciate it. It's been lovely speaking with you. Very excited to see where you're at in 12 months at Cinch and how much they're going to grow. Thank you for coming.
Yeah, thanks for having us, Jack.